Hello, everybody, and welcome to our fifth episode of the book, our weekly show in which we read the Bible together and we talk about it and discuss kind of what impressions it makes on us. And this week we'll be reading chapters 10 and 11 of Genesis, in which it describes some genealogies from the moment that Noah and his sons and his family settle on earth after the flood. And then also we'll go into the Tower of Babel when it's built and how God takes it down, and we'll talk about what our impressions is on why it's taken down and why it's built. That's also why the notes for today, I guess the starting questions that I thought could be a good spark for conversation would be why was the Tower of Babel built and why did God take it down? But as I usually say with these things, these questions are here just to spark conversation. But wherever you guys want to take it, whatever you think about this story, whatever comes up in your head, just let us know in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube, and if you're watching this live here on Twitch, then let us know in the chat. And if you ever want to join us, we'll be here every Monday at 11 p.m. Spanish time, which is about 4 p.m. Eastern time, or actually 5 p.m. Eastern time, I think, right? So because it's 6, yeah, 6 minus 6, yeah, exactly. And yeah, well, let's get started. We'll read through it and then we'll stop whenever we feel like it, and we'll just process it. We'll probably usually what we've done in the past is just read the 2 chapters and then maybe reread them. But I don't know. I usually just go with the flow, and I'm too disorganized to have things a little bit more prepared. So, but the spirit guides us, and we'll see what God wants to take this one today. Without further ado, we get started here. And we get started here in Genesis chapter 10. Let's see what it's got for us. Table of the Nations, I guess, is the subtitle here they put on this edition. But this chapter starts. This is the New American Bible, by the way. These are the descendants of Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, to whom children were born after the flood. The descendants of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. The descendants of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Diphath, and Togarma. The descendants of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, the Kittim, and the Rodanim. From these branched out the Maridim nations. These are the descendants of Japheth by their lands, each with its own language, according to their clans, by their nations. The descendants of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. The descendants of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Rama, and Sabteka. The descendants of Rama, Sheba, and Dedan. Cush became the father of Nimrod, who was the first to become a mighty warrior on earth. He was a mighty hunter in the eyes of the Lord, hence the saying, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter in the eyes of the Lord. His kingdom originated in Babylon, Erech, and Akkad, all of them in the land of Shinar. From that land he went forth to Assyria, where he built Nineveh, Rehoboth-iri, and Calah, as well as Resen between Nineveh and Calah, the latter being the principal city. Mizraim became the father of the Ludim, the Anamim, the Lehabim, the Naphtahim, the Pathrusim, the Casluhim, and the Caphtorim, from whom the Philistines came. Canaan became the father of Sidon, his firstborn, and of Heth, also of the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, the Archites, the Sinites, the Arvadites, the Zemarites, and the Hamathites. Afterward, the clans of the Canaanites spread out, so that the Canaanite borders extended from Sidon all the way to Gerar, near Gaza, and all the way to Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, near Lasha. These are the descendants of Ham, according to their clans, according to their languages, by their lands, by their nations. To Shem Also, Japheth's oldest brother and the ancestor of all the children of Eber, children were born. The descendants of Shem, Elam, Ashur, Arpachshad, Lud, and Aram. The descendants of Aram, Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mash. Arpachshad became the father of Shelah, and Shelah became the father of Eber. To Eber 2 sons were born. The name of the first was Peleg, for in his time the world was divided, and the name of his brother was Joktan. Joktan became the father of Almodad, Shelef, Hasarmaveth, Jira, Hadoram, Uzal, Dikla, Obal, Abimael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Hobab. All of these were descendants of Joktan. Their settlements extended all the way from Mesha to Sephar, the eastern hill country. These are the descendants of Shem, according to their clans, according to their languages, by their lands, by their nations. These are the clans of Noah's sons, according to their origins and by their nations. From these, the nations of the earth branched out after the flood. Genesis chapter 11, Tower of Babel. The whole world had the same language and the same words. When they were migrating from the east, they came to a valley in the land of Shinar and settled there. They said to one another, "Come, let us mold bricks and harden them with fire." They used bricks for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the sky, and so make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we shall be scattered all over the earth." The Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the people had built. Then the Lord said, "If now, while they are one people and all have the same language, they have started to do this, nothing they presume to do will be out of their reach. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, so that no one will understand the speech of another." So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the speech of all the world. From there the Lord scattered them over all the earth. These are the descendants of Shem. When Shem was 100 years old, he begot Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. Shem lived 500 years after he begot Arpachshad, and he had other sons and daughters. When Arpachshad was 35 years old, he begot Shelah. Arpachshad lived 403 years after he begot Shelah, and he had other sons and daughters. When Shelah was 30 years old, he begot Eber. Shelah lived 403 years after he begot Eber, and he had other sons and daughters. When Eber was 34 years old, he begot Peleg. Eber lived 430 years after he begot Peleg, and he had other sons and daughters. When Peleg was 30 years old, he begot Reu. Peleg lived 209 years after he begot Reu, and he had other sons and daughters. When Reu was 32 years old, he begot Sirach. Reu lived 207 years after he begot Sirach, and he had other sons and daughters. When Sirach was 30 years old, he begot Nahor. Sirach lived 200 years after he begot Nahor, and he had other sons and daughters. When Nahor was 29 years old, he begot Terah. Nahor lived 119 years after he begot Terah, and he had other sons and daughters. When Terah was 70 years old, he begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. These are the descendants of Terah. Terah begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran begot Lot. Haran died after Terah his father in his native land in Ur of the Chaldeans. Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, And the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. Sarai was barren, she had no child. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Abram, and brought them out of Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan. But when they reached Haran, they settled there. The lifetime of Terah was 205 years. Then Terah died in Haran. Cool. I didn't even know we were gonna get into Abram. So that's the whole point. I was like, this is a long, another genealogy I don't get, but we can look into. But it's like, I see, it's another connection. Well, first, it's like, I see, similar to what we were seeing with the other genealogy coming from Adam, right? Is that we see where the nations come, right? Like how they describe it in this way of how the nations come from this one root that would be Adam, and then spreads, into Noah, and then from Noah's sons after the flood, the nations settle. So it's interesting to hear. I mean, the ones that sound a little bit familiar. I guess the Canaanites, and then the other ones. I mean, some of them sound is similar, like familiar, but I didn't quite. I mean, yeah, the Babylonians. I think they mentioned at some point here, right? But then Sodom and Gomorrah, Nineveh, some of these cities. But that would be more, yeah, with the Canaanites, right? And then they also talk about the Philistines, right? Which we'll see they become also a central character as the story of Israel develops and they go back to the land. And then the fact that at the end, which we go here, right? And then we'll address the Tower of Babel and stuff. But when we see here, right, these are the descendants of Terah. Terah begot Abram. Then Terah was 70 years old when he got Abram, Nahor, and Haran, right? So Nahor and Haran begot Lot. So then Terah goes with Abram, with his grandson Lot. So I guess they leave behind Haran, which is the father of Lot. Well, maybe he died or something. And then the other son, Nahor. Because Nahor's Milcah, daughter of Haran. Also, Nahor marries his niece, right? Because Milcah, daughter of Haran, Haran is his brother. Yes, the father of Milcah and Iscah, right? Sarai was barren, right? Okay. And then we have Sarai, which then becomes Sarah, the same way Abraham becomes Abraham. So, but we'll get to that, I suppose, in the next chapters, in which God makes that covenant with Abraham, that is the father of all of us in faith, the father of all nations of faith. This covenant with God. So I guess things are starting to shape up in more concrete terms, because again now we're seeing these descendants from Noah and from the sons of Noah, how they form the nations that they're like historical nations in essence. I mean, I guess they do make some reference to things like that in when we see the genealogy of Adam, but there seem to be more like of the peoples, like even here, right, when they go about the martyrdoms, people. At what point they talk about that, like, and these are the martyrdom people. Yeah, martyrdom nations here, the descendants of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, and all of them, right? And this branched out the martyrdom nation. So again, just shaping the different tribes and nations all to be coming from one root, which would be, again, well, in this case, Noah, right? But then Noah is connected to the root of Adam. So this like it gives authority to, or authority, or I would imagine this. It's not authority. I would imagine it's more like legitimacy to the line of the people of Israel, and yeah. So, but then again, right? It's complicated to kind of follow. There's no way to kind of follow, or I don't know how to follow it in a more analytical way. There's a lot of footnotes here that I see. So I assume here, right, the Sumerians, right here is kind of, oh look, Javan, the Greeks. Oh, this is kind of cool. Let's see some of these footnotes, because this is interesting, right? It goes back to the idea that these descendants create the lines Indo-European people, which later became the medieval rabbinic name for Germany. The Ashkenaz, this is the Ashkenaz Jews, right? Is that? Because I've heard of this in the media these days, the Ashkenazi Jews or something like that. It's like those that are right. There are those that like are from that specific area or something like that. It now designates one of the great divisions of Judaism, Eastern European Yiddish-speaking Jews. But Yiddish is also right. It was like a variation of the German, right? That the Jews spoke, right? Something like that. Let me look it up. Let me show some. But I looked it up some time ago because I was like, what is Yiddish? Ashkenazim, yeah, so it is the language of the Ashkenazi Jews, but European Jews and their descendants, right? But why do I think? Oh no, so it's not related specifically. No, yeah, but there's something of Germanic component, right? Yeah, that's what I'm seeing here. So there's a Semitic component containing post-classical Hebrew and Aramaic, when the first settlers brought them to Europe and the Middle East, and grammatically and lexically more potent Germanic components gleaned from the number of High German, Middle German dialects. So yeah, so this would be like the Ashkenazi Jews would be the ones that settle kind of in Europe. Again, let's kind of see in order, because I do find very interesting these genealogies, and with the footnotes, it helps kind of get what they're going about, and then we can focus more on the Tower of Babel. Or unless anybody here wants to jump into anything that caught their attention. But verse 1, okay, so let's see where this is. Table of the Nations, right? And then Google that says, verse 1 is the fourth of the priestly formulas that structures part 1 of Genesis, introduces the populating of the world and the building of the city. In a sense, chapters 4 and 9 are concerned with the first of the two great commands given to the human race: be fertile and multiply, right? So this is what we've been reading in the past, which 4 to 9 would be, right, to the point of, we've seen Adam and the different genealogy, and then, after the flood, Noah's sons, they said on this, that conflict between the sons and Noah, and seeing his nakedness and all of that. But then here, right, it seems like whereas chapters 10 and 11, which is what we're reading now, are concerned with the second command: fill the earth and subdue it. Interesting. So this, right, okay, I'm trying to understand kind of how the difference would be here. I guess right, which is why we're starting to see peoples, right? Like, starting to see these names that refer to groups of peoples, whereas at the beginning it was just like kind of the multiplication that is more focused on how the root spreads, and this is more how the root settles, right? Fill the earth and subdue it. Right, it refers to each nation's taking the land assigned to it by God. Right. Now things are starting to take place on the earth and on history. I already noted that all nations are descended from the three sons of Noah. The same sentiment is repeated in 10:5, 18, 25. Right. The presupposition of the chapter is that every nation has a land assigned to it by God. The number of the nations is 70 if one does not count Noah. Oh wow, things like that. Yeah, like, right. This is why it's good when, like, people. I mean, there's no way we could ever get to that depth. So it's interesting to read from scholars and stuff. And I mean, that introduces the caveat of interpretation, on what this scholar thinks and this other scholar thinks, and such, which complicates the narrative. But they give so much more detail. Any analysis like this, of people that put more time into these things like that. I would have never noticed that nation is 70 if one does not count Noah and his sons and counts Sidon only once. Okay, again, I mean, the analysis. And also, I don't know why that catches my attention, the one that is 70, but yeah, I think I wonder if whoever, I mean, that's, I guess, the implication, that whoever wrote it wanted to give that sense of 70, like that perfect number that is kind of to represent the humanity. It's a traditional biblical number. According to Genesis 46, so later on, and Exodus 1, Israel also numbers 70 persons, which shows that in some sense represents the nations of the earth, right? So everybody is 70. This chapter classifies the various peoples known to the ancient Israelites. It is theologically important as stressing the basic family unity of all peoples on earth, right? Again, it goes back to the idea that we were seeing before, that the point of this genealogy is to give legitimacy to the unity of all nations under one root. I mean, eventually under one seed will be the Adam and Eve seed, but that it continues this line, that it's not discontinued at any point, that we come from God, we come from that first creation that has kind of spread, and not spread, but like continued through history, through that commandment that is given us to multiply and to settle on earth, right, and to subdue it. The relationship between the various peoples, it is sometimes called the table of nations. Okay, that's why the name of this subtitle to the chapter, right? The relationship between the various people is based on linguistic, geographical, political grounds. In general, the descendants of Japheth are the peoples of the Indo-European languages to the north and western Mesopotamia and Syria. The descendants of Ham are the Hamitic-speaking peoples of northern Africa. I mean, it's also interesting, right, where it's placed geographically, right? The Promised Land or whatever, or yeah, I mean the Promised Land, right, where Jesus ends up showing up, and where Abraham is taken. It's like it's at a very central place in that sense. Like, if we move away from the usual map that puts Europe in the middle, because I mean Europeans made it, and then you have America, right? And it's like the Middle East, right? But if you actually shift that and put the Middle East and that area of Jerusalem and all that, and current Israel, like if you put that in the center, it's like it's very, like if you go to the southwest, then you're getting into Africa. If you know northwest, you get into Europe, and then northeast, you're getting into Asia. So it's kind of like from this kind of route, it spreads out. Even the shape of it is kind of like this thing that it's connected to the three main continents of our days, right? And then obviously we have to kind of put North America and America in general to the side, which is also why I see why the narrative later on, right? When you come from a tradition like this, and then they discover America, the fact that it was considered kind of like the promised land, you know how like the Spaniards, that's why they sent, you know, the best of the best in their nation, and they wanted to build this new world. This new world, it's like it was seen by many as the promised land, as like because it was. If you look at the narrative, right, it's like all the peoples, we know these peoples here, and we're all connected by land, and it's the spread of this. But then on the other side of the planet, in a very like what they would call it virgin land in their respect, even though they were the natives and stuff, but that introduced a lot of issues ideologically with who are they people, you know, and that creates a lot of issues and divisions. But I mean, but even the approach that the Spaniards and the, you know, and the Catholic Church took, because you know the Spanish kings and stuff were under the approval of the Pope. It's like the idea of like they are people and we have to bring them to Christ and stuff. But there were many people that didn't see it that way, and even to later, much later, they didn't see it that way. And other nations like the British, or I mean, anyway, things get complicated because I mean that also brings people to that perception of race, even with African stuff. But leaving on that aside, to me, what I find intriguing most is that if you look at it geographically, it does look like it's like a spread into three parts, and the center of that spread, that route, is in the place where is the promised land. So even in that part alone, it has some type of poetic symmetry. But then, right, and then the America element is where it's kind of throws the whole narrative off, or how I could see it could be very mind blowing for for a European, for anybody in that time, because Europeans were the one dominating that time in history. But at the end of the day, everybody in that area kind of didn't know. Even the Russians, even though they were connected to America through the east, because of the coldness, they probably didn't get much exploration done. But uh, but yeah, the idea of this new land. Um, but leaving that aside, because I feel like the focus is more on how these nations spread. Let's see. Are the Hamitic speaking right? So the Africa people will be Ham, Japheth will be Indo-European, and then Semitic people. Wait, and the descendants of Shem, right? And again, Shem is the one that we saw, if I remember correctly. That was kind of the righteous one of the three. If I will have to kind of see. Let's go back to. No, not live 300. Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of days. When Noah woke up, Ham, the father of Canaan, right? So Ham is the father of Canaan as the Hamite. So this would be kind of the opposed to Shem. Shem and Japheth, however, took a robe and holding it. So Shem and Japheth would be kind of the ones that didn't fall away. Cursed by Canaan, the lowest of slaves, he'll be to his brothers. He also said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, right? Let Canaan be his slave. May God expand Japheth, and may he dwell among the tents of Shem. But he blesses Shem specially, right? And it's interesting, right? Because it would make sense with this idea that the Semites. Oh, maybe. Oh, wow. That's why the name Semites. The anti-Semite obviously is somebody against the Semites, against the Jews. So the Semites, because they're descendants of Shem. Huh. I mean, again, I that's how it sounds in my. That's how it rings to me, but maybe not. But I mean, the Semitic speaking people, right? I mean, it makes sense. Hamitic from Ham, right? So yeah, Semitic from Shem, right? Speaking of Mesopotamia, Syria, and Arabia. But there are many exceptions to this rule. The Semitic speaking people of Canaan are considered descendants of Ham, right? So it's not just only around language, right? Because of one time they were subject to Hamitic Egypt. Okay. This chapter is generally considered to be a composite from the Yahwist source and the priestly source. Presumably, that is why certain terms of Arabia are listed under both Ham and Shem. Got it. All right. We talked about this too when we saw the genealogies of where were like the sons of Adam, right? Yeah, which is what is it? Cain, Abel, and what's the other one? Cain, Abel, and what's the other one? Well, let me just look it up on Google. It's gonna be easier. Sons of Adam, sons of Adam is Cain, Abel, and then the guy that replaces Cain, Abel. And what's the third son? Yeah, what's the third one? Bro, why is it such a hard question? Third son of Adam. Let's see. Third son of Adam. Seth, yeah, and Seth, right. So when we saw that, we saw the different lines that they were kind of like contradictory, even not contradictory, but just they just kind of follow different paths, and it's because there's two sources to this whole thing. But anyway, okay, so then the descendants of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, and then here's where, right, Gomer is where we start to describe, right, each one of these descendants as being like the start of a nation. Javan, the Greeks, the Medes, Ashkenaz, the Ashkenazi, Elisha, the Cyprus, the Kittim, certain inhabitants of Cyprus, the Rodanim, the inhabitants of Rhodes. Oh, wow. Cush, biblical Ethiopia, modern Nubia. And this, where are we here? Because we saw Kittim, right? All of these are descendants of Japheth, which again we gotta remember is one of the two sons that didn't mess up in that sense. They didn't rebel against. They didn't see the nakedness of Noah, right? And then the Ashkenaz, the Togarma, the descendants of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, and Kittim and Rodanim. That's what we saw here. And this branch, the maritime nations, right? Okay, because we said Elisha, and then the roads, right? Okay, Cyprus, right? So they're the islands, right? And then we have here Cush, which was the descendants of Ham, right? So these are the people, the Canaanites, right? Hud and Cush and Mizraim. So Cush seems to be Kosia, the country of the Kassites, okay? So you note on 2:10, Nimrod, possibly Tukultininurta, the first Assyrian conqueror of Babylon. So these are the Assyrians, maybe, possibly, right? It was of Babylon, a famous city builder at home. Right, and again, we go back to what we also saw about Nimrod being a mighty warrior in the eyes of the Lord. So he's like a great person in the history, because even they had the fact that they had a saying about him, right? Shinar, the land of ancient Babylonia, embracing Sumer and Akkad, present-day southern Iraq, mentioned also. Okay, so again, Shinar. These are all, yeah, so there's Babylonians, the Canaanites, these are all his kingdom originating in Babylon, Erech, and Akkad, and all of them in the land of Shinar. So this is Nimrod, right, that we were talking about. So Nimrod is the son of Cush. Oh, got you, which are the Kassites, right? Got it. They're kind of the Babylonians. Oh, although it says the first conqueror of Assyria, the first Assyrian conqueror of Babylonians. So I guess the Assyrians and the Babylonians. Then we have Rehoboth Ir. White Street City was probably not the name of the city, but an epithet of Nineveh. Epithet of Nineveh. So again, they talk about the city of Nineveh here. Where, oh, right. From that land, he went forth to Assyria, where he built Nineveh. Right, that's why they were talking about the first Assyrian guy that conquers them, Babylonia. And Keilah is known as reason between Nineveh and Keilah, the latter being the principal city. Keilah, Assyrian Kalu, the capital of Assyria in the 9th century. Wow. Yeah, so we're just starting to say, hey, GRT, we're going to hear through these like complex genealogies again that ends up just, we end up diving into the footnotes. We're after the flood and everything. Is that the Bible? Yeah. Well, that's what we do every Monday evening, remember? And yeah, we're reading here through the genealogies of the sons of Noah, which are Japheth, Ham, and Shechem? No, the guy, the Semite, right? So Shemite? Damn, I forgot already. His names are so confusing. Shem. So yeah, Japheth, Ham, and Shem. So Shem is the from whom the Semites come, which are the Jewish people. Did you know the Catholic Bible is bigger than the Protestant Bible? I didn't know that. Okay, I mean depends also what Protestants, but yeah, I mean I didn't know that. Yeah, okay. What do you draw from that? What does that mean to you? The land of ancient Babylonia. Okay, here we continue. Keilah, Assyrian called the Pathrusim, the people of Upper Egypt. Okay, so now it's like the Egyptians. Canaan became the father of Sidon, his firm. Here. Mizraim became the father of Ludim. So here from this side too, we also see the Egyptians, right? Coming from the line of Ham. Again, so there's a characterization here of the different peoples coming from different parts of. Is mourning a part of life? Interesting change of topic. Is mourning a part of life? Yeah, I mean it has to be, because we see it is within the life that we live. Yeah, I would say. I mean everything that we perceive would have to be part of life, right? Hey Chisa, how's it going? But then why you say, by the way, Geraldine? It's Archites. Canaan became the father of Sidon. We continue here. These are the descendants of Ham, according to their clans, according to their languages. Right? To Shem also Japheth's oldest brother, and the ascents also Japheth's oldest brother, and the ancestor of all the children. So Shem is actually the eldest. Interesting. Or at least Japheth's older brother. Maybe Ham is the eldest. I'll have to kind of check back on that. Let's see, actually. Let me just Google. It's going to be easier. Sons of Noah by age or something like that. And, who is the oldest son of Noah? Japheth is considered having the eldest son, but wait, in rabbinic literature. Okay, this I guess it gets confusing. Japheth was the oldest son born. Okay, Shem was born. Okay, then I guess maybe I'm missing something because this is here. What does it say here again? Damn, I lost it. Where are we? No, Tower of Babel. No, like descendants of Ham, according to Shem, Japheth's oldest brother. Interesting. And the ancestor of all the children of Eber. Children were born. Maybe here. Eber, the eponymous ancestors of the Hebrews. Eber. Oh, wow. That is the one whom they trace their name. Wow, that's where the Hebrews come from. Eber. In the Hebrew text, there is a play on the name Peleg, and the word Nipliga was divided. Oh, that's why the one that divided. Oh, through him, people were divided. This story, okay. This is where we get to Tower of Babel. Okay, but okay, we kind of have tracked in a piecing way. It's a midday. Oh, sorry to hear that, Chizo. What's going on? Like you mean here in the stream, or you mean in your day? What version of the Bible is it? New American Bible. It's the New American Bible because we were using the Douai, whatever translation which was available in the service I was using, but it was like very, I mean not very okay, but it was like a little bit more dense English, a lot of thous and these, and like even like the choice of words, it was confusing to me. So I'm like, let me just use the New American Bible. At least the footnotes I only read sometimes. Well, I don't know. You will have to tell me that. But yeah, I mean, even some of the interpretations in these footnotes, I ended up. I remember, for example, with the one about the Nephilim, and I was like, oh, I like other views on it than what these people say. But I mean, definitely for analytical context, they're helping a lot because this is very confusing things when it gets to the genealogy. But let's see here. So yeah, we've kind of traced things in the sense that the Ham is Ham, which is the son that kind of sees the nakedness of Noah. I guess the one that falls more into sin would be kind of ascribed to the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Egyptians, so the enemies, the Canaanites, the enemies of Israel, those that are away from God. You know, the Canaanites with the human sacrifices, same with the Egyptians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. And then from the Japheth, I guess it's more of like the Greeks, the people in the sea, you know, the people from Rhodes and from Cyprus. So they're kind of the neutral people, I suppose. The Gentiles, I suppose, right? That it would be like the Gentiles that are not. I mean, also the other ones would be Gentiles, but I guess the ones that are not that far off from God in that respect. And then we have Shem, which is from the Semites, right? And Eber being the father of the Hebrews. So yeah, we got a good foothold, I think, now in this genealogy, a little bit. Not a good foothold, but a good enough foothold. We're standing on one foot here. So now we get into the story of the Tower of Babel, the very well-known story about, you know, humanity being all together speaking one word, come together in one city, and they build Babel. I was hearing from some commentaries that this would be kind of where Babylonia comes from, like Babel, Babylonia. I wonder. I mean, it sounds similar, and it kind of I get the point, but again, it wouldn't really add up to the idea that there was same language. But again, we look back to what we've discussed in the past of this not being, you know, a historical kind of things, but more of like a, I don't want to call it mythological because it's not myth in that sense, but it's kind of like a allegorical, poetic way of telling the origin of things. It's in the same area theoretically. Oh, Babel being in the same area as Babylonia. Oh, got you. Yeah, but again, this goes back to the idea of was it really an actual place? Because then again, it goes back to like, then what? Like, how do all nations have the same language and then sky? But again, it's hard to, at least for me, I find it hard to kind of separate what would be an actual event. Like you say, the flood is an event, right? Because the Babylonians also have like some big flood accounted for. And again, you know, the idea of it, you know, but yeah, but I suppose if they were actual characters in those events that we were looking at, then it gets a bit confusing to me. I mean, even if they are, right, the tracking of all of the peoples to these like actual persons, it's like confusing, but I don't know. There are like 20 something Babylons in Iraq, from what I heard. Interesting. Like, what do you mean? Like there are different versions, like people saying that it's here and there, or that they actually found it. Because yeah, I assume it's just hard to track where it actually was. But Babylon was a nation, right? It's not like a city, or Babylon was a city. Babylonians, right? It's like, or was it like a city state? Oh, look, we even see it here. The Hebrew form of the name Babylon. The Babylonians interpreted their name for the city Babili as the gate of God. Ooh, the Hebrew word Balal, he confused, has a similar sound. So there's definitely some connection here. Okay, let's see here. This story illustrates increasing human wickedness, shown here in the sinful pride that human beings take in their own achievements apart from God. Secondarily, the story explains the diversity of languages among the peoples on earth, right? So again, that's why I'm wondering, like, how much of that is just a kind of a way to connect an actual event? Because I think it's that at the same time. It's like there's an actual event that they connect to a reality, like the reality that different peoples have different languages, connected to the event of Babylon building a great tower or something like that. Archaeological sites. Nations were cities back then. Ah, okay, fair. Fair, right. They would build around a city mostly. Okay. Right, because nation at the end of the day is a group of people. But yeah, I would think right, I guess you have the main city around which you build. And then you have little towns or things like that. Got it, got it. But they would have some land, because they talk about the land that they control. But right, they would control that land and have a central city through which they control the land, something like that, like the capital, and then they would name the nation after the capital. This story is just right, and then Shinar, Sino, Ten. Wait, what is Ten? The land of ancient Babylonia. Okay, embracing some. All right. That's the land of Babylonia. So right. Where are we? Oh no, this is 10. We are at 11. Shinar, because we were reading here. Tower of Babel, the whole world had the same language and the same words. When they were migrating from the east, they came to a valley in the land of Shinar and settled there. The whole world had the same, so the whole, because they're still moving together, I guess, right? Because we've seen, this is the thing too, when he jumps back and forth, it's like, it's telling us where these people come from, but then at some point they were all moving together, even if they then settle in different lands, which is what happens after the Tower of Babel. So I guess all these people at whatever point in genealogy, like all the sons of Japheth and Shem and Ham, they're all together as one nation. And again, that would all add up in that sense. Like if it's coming from the flood, and then the humanity comes out of humanity starts to spread again around those descendants of Noah, then that they would all have the same language, right? But now under that language, right, is when they build this tower that is, because everybody's working together, but in a prideful way. They just wanna, what does it say? Let's build ourselves a city and a tower with the top in the sky, and so make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we shall be scattered all over the earth. So it's interesting too how this shows kind of how fear in life too that does that to you. It's like by fear of something happening, you do something that ends up making the fear appear. Because it's kind of as a way to cure yourself from the fear, or like God curing you of that fear. It makes it real, you know what I'm saying? So that you can see that you can overcome it through Him. There's like you want to protect yourself from pain by just being away from God and not loving people. Then pain comes to you. Like I've heard of that about, for example, the cross. It's like if you don't carry your cross just becomes heavier. It doesn't, like, you have your own like tribulations and your own challenges that you gotta overcome. If you don't face those challenges, if you don't pick up the cross, then the cross just becomes heavier. It doesn't go away. I'll be right back. Every time I can be okay. No worries, Jesus. Okay, so then we see here, come and let us build more. Right. They're just building the tower. Let's see. There's a footnote here too with this referral. Tower with its top in the sky, possibly a reference to the chief ziggurat of Babylon, Isagila, the house that raises high its head. Again, so we go back to this mixing of explaining of current state of things, like the idea that different nations have different languages, and linking it to actual events. So interesting. I mean, all of this just puzzles me, but at the same time gives some light, at least some poetic light to it all, because I just don't know enough to link it all in my head. It's so many variables. Okay, then we have here again. We go to 9, but we'll get there. All right, and so make a name for ourselves, otherwise we shall be scattered. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people have built. Then the Lord said, if now, right, if we just let them to their own devices, they'll continue to rebel. Because this goes back also what we were seeing in previous chapters of the moment you look at God, it's because many people, right, they look at the Old Testament, they're like, I could even fall into that. Like we could all we have that tendency to see like God as this cruel and oppressive. that is just punishing their people and sending them here and there. But I don't like, the more I revisit this text with a fresher, like, with the New Testament and the gospel more interiorized and a deeper relationship, a personal relationship with Christ and with God, you see and the mercy of God, because you've seen kind of we are at the end of times. We've seen the work of God coming to fruition in Christ, and the immense mercy with which he treats us. And then you look back at this history, right? And God doesn't seem like he is, he's punishing whatever and doing these things, but it looks more exactly like a fatherly thing, like he's in its own context, right? Because it's very different times. That's the other thing that I feel like we forget to take into account sometimes, that there were very different times. Like, we were very different people. Like, I don't like it's we don't answer to the same level of sophisticated education and I mean in a cultural way, right? Like, what would set us on the right path would need to be, I think, a little bit more of a rougher hand than it is now, because we were closer to the animal state, I think, in many respects. So the fact that when it gets like, it seems so like, over the top to like take down this or take down a nation, or then later when we see, the struggles between kings, and then God doing this, that seems to our eyes to be even cruel or oppressive or something. If you look at it with not only just within the context, but with the intention, you know what I'm saying? And the idea that like the flood is a good example. We're looking at, say, oh, how can God just flood the whole earth, right? But it goes back to, if you think of the idea that people, like, we have already, since the fall of man, condemn ourselves to die, like we have made ourselves slaves to death. The ending of, by what way that death comes, like, it's like, oh, it's a flood that comes, or it's a sickness at the end of days, or like what, like, it's not that relevant as much as the state in which you die. You know what I'm saying? Like, are you closer to God or further away from God? Because, and then it makes sense that at some point, as we were seeing with why the flood came, it's like, at some point humans got so far from God, that God, that is all knowing, knew, okay, these people in their freedom will not, there's no possible choice for them at this point that will get them close to me, so I might as well just end it here. And it's not like, again, if you look at things with the perspective, from a divine perspective, as much as one can do, which is just that we are already condemned to die, like, it's just a matter of at what time, right? And then God is just being like, okay, to make things cleaner, to give an opportunity, to be a medicine to this. I gotta cut this limb off, so I gotta put them in bed, type of thing. Like, I gotta, so that they can recover from this pain, from this challenge of the flood, or here the Tower of Babel falling and then being scattered. It's not as much that it's not a painful thing, or a thing that is, it would be better if it didn't happen, but it's almost like, if it is a consequence of us, so we get together, we become prideful, we make this tower, and then God is like, okay, how do I get them closer to me? Because if I let them just continue this down this road, they're gonna fall off the cliff. Like, they're never gonna get back to me. They're never gonna learn. They're gonna continue going down that cliff, and then they just, like, I cannot let them do that, because at the end of the day, that would be actual damnation. Like, that's if God just be like, okay, whatever, you guys do this. I'm not gonna intervene at all. And since I'm not gonna intervene, you guys can just go to hell. That's basically what would happen if it lets us either continue before the flood and doesn't, like, resets the whole clock, and then if he doesn't take down the tower, it's kind of being like, okay, whatever, you guys want to do your tower and do your little thing and feel like you're powerful, you guys are going to keep suffering more and more and do more and more wrong to each other, but I'm just going to let it happen. So that is the real cruelty. That would be a really cruel God, in which is just, he doesn't care. He's already, oh, you guys condemn yourself to death. Okay, you guys fell and took the apple, and now you decided to make yourself slaves to death. Okay, whatever. That's the consequence, and I'm not gonna do anything about it. But no, he does. Okay, that's the consequence, because that's the action, the real action. But I am gonna intervene as much as I can without altering your freedom, to bring you back. And it's like, I wait until the last moment in which you yourself have completely surrendered your freedom to other gods, in that sense, like to the world, to hell, right? And now that you have surrendered completely to hell, that it is no way for you freely to get out of there, is when I intervene, because until then I'll give you the freedom to do it yourself. I fear the distance I have yet to go in my relationship with God. That's why I fear death. You fear it? Why do you fear it? And also, why do you fear death? I look forward to it more than I fear it, though. Nothing without love. And when does all love come from? Where does all love come from? I think come from God. Otherwise, will cause us to fall. I mean, it already did. Yeah, but then that's why it's like, why be afraid? You know, why be afraid? If it is our pride, that I would be afraid in any case. I mean, not even afraid, but worried about our pride. I would be worried about, about not trusting God. I would be worried about it. But then it's like, it's not even a worry when you start thinking about it. It's like, then just trust Him, you know what I'm saying? Just try to move away from fear, I feel, right? I'm I'm trying to understand what you are afraid of in that sense. Like, are you afraid that you won't be there or something like that? Like you be too far from God, that you, or like that you won't, I don't know, that you won't accept God in the way that He wants you to accept Him or something like that. I feel like if you worry about something, that in itself shows to God that you are accepting Him to the extent that you're able to, like, in the sense, like you need that there's work that needs to be done, but you're striving towards it, like you want to be closer to God, right? Am I understanding correctly what this fear is? Like, you fear death, as in you fear the judgment of God, that He's gonna look at your life and be like, oh, you messed up too much, something like that. Because I mean, I love it because it's a very human thing. I think it happens to me too sometimes, but I think it's something that definitely is not the way that God thinks. I think God is so merciful, and that to be afraid of the judgment is precisely what the devil wants you to do, to accuse you and be like, hey, you're gonna mess up. God is gonna, and then it's like that brings you down more. Like, that means you to be like, okay, well, I have no way to solve this. Like, and then by fear of death, you kind of hold on to this life because you're like, as soon as it ends, I'm gonna have to face judgment. I suppose if you be the trusting, I being human and having experienced relationship with other humans, have trouble comprehending someone in whom I could place complete trust. I have moments, but doubt comes over and over. Right. Then I suppose it's like, but do you believe in the identity of Him, of God? Because I feel like that's the main thing that gives me the trust, you know? It's not as much that I have a capacity to trust other people, and from that I draw the capacity to trust God. It's more like God is just not the same at all. So it's like I feel like the starting point is more, do I believe God to be God? So then the moment God is God, then I guess it's, there will be, I mean, I suppose I get what you're saying, which is like, rationally you do trust Him. Like, there's no reason for you not to trust God, but on a day-to-day basis, it's like, I have to take care of myself, right? Something like that. Like, you feel like you have to take care of yourself. You have to build your own tower in that sense, or something, Because I feel that too. I think, like, one thing is what I say, in the sense of what I believe rationally to be the truth, which is I must trust the Lord with everything, right? Because He is God, right? It's like the logic adds up. It's like He He is God. He's all powerful. I believe He's real. Also, there's the add-on that He sent His own Son to die for my sins, and that Son also told me, trust in me. Don't worry about anything. I'll take care of everything. Just trust in me and do my will. Do the commandments, and not only that, but proclaim me, right? So I could just do that, right? I could just fully do that, like, and not worry about anything, no worry. I have to, but it's like, let me try the diagram here. Okay, I got you, but yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I'll let you kind of develop what you're saying. But in the meantime, I mean, let's see what else. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we addressed the main thing, and I think it's transitioned into this conversation, which is a very real. I feel like this conversation has shifted into showing in our own lives what that Tower of Babel looks like, which is when we ourselves feel like like there's no way, like we have to make our names, like we says here in the Tower of Babel, right? So that we make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we shall be scattered all over the earth. Like, this is it. Like, we fear that we ourselves and our actions are gonna be scatter us. So then we gotta do things to unite us. We gotta do things to save ourselves. And I think that's where we do a lot of with our lives too. It's like we build this Tower of Babel, that like we build this, communities and thing. I mean, again, it's nothing wrong with community, but like in some times it is, in the sense like how and why. That's the thing too, and which I saw in the commentaries. Like, it's not the idea of building a very high tower that it's magnificent. That's like the idea of excellence is not a problem. Is the excellence for what? Like, to want to be a great saint is not a bad thing. to want to be a great person, like, away from God, that is the bad thing. It's the why, it's the for what. If you want to be a great saint, that means that you want to be great for God. You want to be a great servant of God. You want to glorify God in a great way. You want to build cathedrals in that sense. Cathedrals with your life, like, that's not need to be a physical cathedral, but it could be too. But the moment you're trying to build, a temple for yourself, and you want to make yourself great, so you don't need God, it's like that excellence is the wrong one. That is the excellence of Babel. It's like, let's build this tower that reaches to the sky, but not for God, but for ourselves, so that we can save ourselves. And that is what drives you away from it. That ends up, your fear, it's what ends up happening, which I think it goes back to this too. It's like, I fear God's judgment. I fear that, that to trust him, because it's like, I fear death, and I fear that distance that I have from God, right? So then you double down in that. And I mean you as in me, as in everybody, right? We double down on that distance, because we're like, oh no, I'm not worthy of God. I cannot get there. I cannot get to trust him. And instead of trying to trust him in even a small way, like that, I like that image always of the faith as a mustard seed. I didn't get it at first when I was a kid, but now I understand more and more to be just, it doesn't matter what the size of your faith is. It matters that you have it, that you have that seed. And then you plant it and it becomes a huge tree with time, with care. But it doesn't matter how big it is. The important thing is caring for it. Instead of being like, well, no, my faith is so small. My relationship with God is so small. I'm so far from God that there's no point in addressing it. Or you become afraid that when your death comes, like at the end of this, your tree won't have grown big enough. But no, just let it develop, and it will be as big as God has intended it to be, which is what all he wants from you, I think. Like, that's also why it's like I mean, it just, you look at the actual history in the Bible, the actual gospel, the stories of the saints, and God is just very, very, very merciful. Like, there's really nothing to worry about. Like, we sometimes I think of God as this, a human judge that is just gonna, oppress us with uh he's just gonna look at our life and be like, how did you mess this here? How did you mess this here? And it's like, even as humans, we are able to see the, sorry, sorry, my phone was dying. So even as humans, we're able to see that this, nuances to people's situations, and that's why they make this decision and this other decision. But but then so if we're able to do that, then how can God, how can God not do that too? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's, yeah, God will do that even infinitely more, because he knows us more deeply. He knows the whole world more deeply. So I don't know. um I think we just gotta worry less, in the sense, like, worry about, I mean, it's not worry, but just concern ourselves with God, with God's will, what he wants. And that's why it's important to, but without stress, without anxiety, because it's kind of like being a child. I mean, it really is just like that. That's why I think Jesus says, you must be like like these children, because if you are like a child, and I don't mean in the level of maturity or understanding, right? It's just more in the attitude towards God. It's because when you're a child, right, and you are a child of loving parents, right? eh, You're not concerned. You're concerned with learning because you want to make your father proud, your mother proud, because you want to show and reciprocate the love. You're not worried about your father or your mother just kind of oppressing you or something. That actually is counterproductive when children feel that way with their parents because of their parents' action, that they feel like they have to, not make their parents angry. Like, it's kind of like a counter act instead of being an act. It's kind of like, to keep their parents from being angry, they gotta do well, because then doing well becomes just really just pleasing their parents in whatever, like, short term thing. And I think what I'm trying to get to here is that if you can recall to those moments in which you've tried to do something for your parents just to make them happy, just because you love them, you know what I'm saying? I think that's, if you take that same attitude towards God, and you look at God in that same way, in which, or even you, if you are a parent, right, and you look at your children, it's like, you want your children to do well for their own sake. You want them to be happy and to grow and to learn and to, for their own way. So you gotta put boundaries, and you gotta do things whenever it's necessary. And when you see that they're like going really far away, then you gotta intervene that as well. But at the end of the day, you want them to get there by themselves. And if they don't, you don't love them less. You don't. you can get angry. So you things can get out of hand because again we're not perfect. But in our ideal view of us, I think as parents, I am not a parent, but I'm saying I can imagine myself in that position, even though I never could. But I'm saying like the idea of, I mean, it goes back. It's easier for me to think of the ideal than somebody that is has lived it because then they've lived their mistakes and stuff. But I bet even those people have that idea of what they would have liked to do as a parent or what they would like to do now as a parent. And is that idea is like you loving, you're understanding, but you're also guiding. You're not, you're not leading them astray. You put in the work for them, but at the same time, you're not oppressing them in any way. And I think that if you think of God as that, as how you are to your children, then and in the attitude, I mean, not in the actual actions that are full of mistakes, then it's like a perfect version of a father. Then you see that there's nothing to worry about. Like you just God is just seeing us try. He understands that we're clumsy. He understands that we're like children who need a lot of work and who are very far away. And we've been, we've surrounded by other people that are far away that drive us away. We ourselves come from a line that has been driven away. So there's all this, we're very far away in that sense, but he sees us coming to him, and that's what makes him happy. Like I think it's just that, because I mean, how can it not be that? If he already is a loving father who wants us to do well, then all he cares about, all he really judges us on is our attitude, like our trial, our trying, our turning back, our conversion towards him. And everything else is, I think, in many senses, just it's really just a recompense. You know what I'm saying? Like when we look at our lifetime, it's like, oh, I messed up here, messed up that. That is the recompense. It's like, in the sense, like if I sin, my life turns worse, and that is, I guess, the punishment in that sense. And if I do well, my life turns better, and that's the recompense. But that's not that comes to be it in that sense. Like God's judgment is based on what we decide to do with that freedom, the yes or no, and to what things we say yes and what things we say no. And ultimately, the ultimate yes at that moment, like at the end of the race, where are we at the end of the race? Are we moving towards God or moving away from God? And no matter where we are, I think it's like it doesn't matter that we're very far away. If at the moment, if at the last moment we are turning towards God and we're running towards Him, He'll figure out the rest because He sees that we have learned that it is in Him that we can find love and comfort and peace. And is the person that in the last instance, after all these chances, all this, they choose to turn away from God, then is the point in which it's like, okay, then there's nothing else. Like you have chosen death. Like there's no other possibility. You have chosen every possible thing to move away from God. And there's no more. There's no more chances to happen because the world itself has played its course, and the world in your life. So I think that is the judgment itself. Is really nothing else but the consequence of all the things, like the end. It's just things continue to develop in some way or another, and you've made your decisions. You've decided to say yes to this or say no to that, and you've decided to build the Tower of Babel or not. And at the end of the day, that plays out. Like it just plays out, and yeah, and there's a point. There's a point. There's an end to our lives, and then comes eternity, right? Which is when, but at that eternity has to be at the other side of this long tunnel in which Adam and Eve, and ourselves, we got in the fall. It's like we got ourselves understand at the other end of that tunnel when all the possibilities have been run out. In which is like, okay, like in our freedom, we could have taken it all the way to the flat, all the way to the Tower of Babel, or we can take it all the way back to God. And these are like little ends of the world in that sense, you know what I'm saying? I mean, they're not little at all, but I just mean like our own lives, our own deaths are ends of the world because they all kind of come together at some point. But when I die, that is the end of the world for me, you know what I'm saying? Even if the world continues and then it ends, and then, it doesn't matter. It's the end of the world for me because after this, I go to heaven in that sense or to hell, whatever. I get to the judgment point. So that is the end of the world. So if you think about it like that, then the point of it is not as much to see how many good things I can put together, how many bad things, and then somebody's gonna make an account of it all. It's more of like at that moment of the end of times, which at the end of times for me is my death, am I gonna be looking towards God? Or am I looking away? And because it's such a risky thing, you wanna you wanna get closer. Because I'm not saying because it's not even about that. Like when you start developing the relationship with God and with Christ, I think the beauty of it is not that you're not doing it for the end moment. The end moment is just the unavoidable end because and it's actually a desirable end because it's when everything gets sorted out. But in the meantime, you just have discovered that there's greatness and there's a better place back at your father's house, like in the tale of the prodigal son, right? In the tale of the parable of the prodigal son. The idea of just why am I here eating with pigs? You know, I could turn to my father and go back there, and that's what drives a person to do better. And if you try to forget, and at least it helps me, if we try to forget more and more about tallies and trying to do the right thing just so God can give us heaven, you know what I'm saying? As we're getting something back. And you focus on why do it, you know what I'm saying? Why do I want to do good? Is it because I love God? And if it is because I love God and for the glory of God, that will drive everything. And that will be the only thing that matters to God. That you love him back, you know what I'm saying? That you want to do good. You want to be loving to him and approach him directly. So I think that's the beauty of it all. I think we can leave it around here because the time is getting to that end, and I think that was a beautiful note. Then it kind of addresses the point here of the Tower of Babel, how like this we try to do things to protect ourselves, to make our name for ourselves, and then God has to come and take it down for the simple reason that it's better for us. That if now we continue to go down that road and we're gonna be further and further from God and we don't realize it, but it's worse for us. And those are the tribulations that come in life. I mean, tribulations and challenges that brought me to God. You know what I'm saying? If I hadn't been for the suffering and the pain that I went through in some points in my life, I wouldn't have realized, I wouldn't have woken up to the great light that I was running away from. And so I think it's important to take that into account to when tribulations come in your life, that the focus like Job is just to continue to glorify God. You know, God has given it, God has taken it away, and if you do that, God. I mean, it's not even God. It's not even that it's like God is just playing games with you. It's like, oh, let me pick a boo with you and bringing you good things about things. He's treating you. You know, you are ill and he's treating you. So when he sees that you take like the medicine is doing too much and you cannot take it, then he stops and he lets you rest and stuff, and then he gives you another dose of the medicine so you can get better, because you need to be cured so that you can be at the end of times, at the end of your life, you can be with him. So it's like the more medicine that you take, the closer you're gonna be to him, because you'll be cured of more things. And then I also go back about how the idea of purgatory will be that it's like those people that have striven to get closer to God, like me and like most people will go to purgatory because of that, because it's like you strive, but there's so much yet to do, yet to purify, yet to cure yourself from. So then God allows you to do that in eternity, in that other realm, like when you already have finished your time here. It's like, okay, in the infinite mercy of God, he's still okay, let's cure you fully now. Let's cure you fully now that you've seen my face, now that you were running towards me, right? And that's the whole thing. It's like no matter how big it is, that's why you don't gotta be afraid of the judgment, because as long as you walking towards God at whatever distance that you are in the last moment, then the rest will be sorted out after. God will do whatever is necessary to get you there and purify you so you can get to heaven to be in his presence. So that all that matters is walking towards God, at whatever pace, however far away you are. And if you focus on that, God will do the rest. But yeah, that's gonna be it here for today's episode. It was a calm one, it was a nice one. I like this. And yeah, we'll continue next Monday with Genesis chapters 12 and let me see. Actually, that thing we're doing, let's see, 12 and 13 maybe or something like that. Anyway, I don't want to. I'll look it up. But yeah, the next chapters we'll be doing that. So if you're watching this on YouTube, so thank you for joining us, and leave in the comments what you thought of all this, and what you think of the Tower of Babel, and the reasons behind it and how it translates to our own lives and our own actions. And yeah, thank you very much for being here and for becoming part of this journey of us just reading through the Bible and dissecting it to the very small extent or whatever, like our ignorant. I mean, at least it's me. I'm just saying. Like I don't know much about this. I'm not a scholar or anything, but I just read it and things resonate to me, and this is what comes in my head. So again, I wanted to share it with you guys, and I hope you share with me what you think of all this. And I mean, I'll see you guys next week. And then also, I just want to leave it here that we have other evening shows on Tuesdays. Like tomorrow, we have Live Words, which is reading through a work of English literature. Wednesdays, we have reading through a Spanish work of literature. We read it in Spanish and we translate it as we go. Thursdays, we have Divinely Human, which is our conversations with interesting people. And that I find interesting, which ends up being just everybody that I can just find to sit down with me, anybody. And then Friday is Finance Friday, which is a show with Wreckfish Capital with my boy Evan from Wreckfish Capital, and which we just analyze current events in finance and in markets and companies from a financial perspective, and just see it, how to approach investment and how to approach um, the idea of what to, how to analyze companies, because that's what I used to do professionally for investment banking, and then I don't do that anymore, but I still enjoy it. It's a good way to look at human effort from an analytical perspective. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Then also on weekdays, I'm working on the app Rosarium, which you guys can check out at rosarium.app. I'll leave the link in the chat, rosarium.app, and you can check out what the project is about. We're getting ready to launch in a few months, so I look forward to see the interest and what you all think about it. And on Saturdays we play some games. Also, we work some now that we're ramping up. So that's about it. Thank you, everybody, and God bless you.